Okay, we are recording. Dan, how are you today?
I am excellent. How are you?
I'm excellent as well, actually. Yeah, I
I
can't.
always say excellent. I don't know. That's like my natural response. But,
Yeah,
I mean, I am doing excellent. But even if
yeah,
I wasn't, I'd probably just say, yeah, excellent. Yeah,
yeah.
natural response.
Do you know what? It's actually weird you say excellent because I watched Wayne's World for the first time in years
I think that's why.
about
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, and literally all I heard for that whole of that film was just somebody saying excellent to absolutely
Party
everything. So,
time. Excellent. Yep. Yeah, I
right,
think
where are you today, Dan?
that's why it's burned into my brain from years of watching that
Absolutely.
movie. In St. Louis, Missouri, right in the middle of America.
Wonderful. And
Where are
whilst
you
you're
at
there,
today?
I'm just being nosy. And for those that are listening, is that a Bad Religion piece of wall art over there?
In the background, yes, I have the little. It's like a flag. It's like one of those flimsy things. I hung it up. This is like my little studio room in my basement here
Love it.
at my house that I make some terrible music out of and do these kind of things.
Well, look, we're going to be talking about terrible music today. We're going to talk about great music today. So let's kick off your playlist. And I'm going to ask you, please, Dan, to tell me the song that you regard as having the greatest ever intro, please.
Well, whenever I read these, the first thing that popped in my head was AFI, which it's a very weird name, Miseria Cantar or something, but the beginning. But it's the first song off of Sing the Sorrow.
Hmm.
But the only reason I mentioned that is because Story of the Year always wanted to rip off every AFI intro for every record they had. They
Right.
always just have like this big epic, like they make you feel like, whoa, this record's gonna be huge,
Yeah.
And we always tried to do something similar and never ended up doing it because it just felt like we were ripping off AFI. So we never actually did it. But our band, like always, as a band, loved every AFI record. They always had some kind of big chanty, like epic intro thing that like set you up for that record.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's better intros out there for songs or albums, but that's just what pops in my head when I think of big, cool, epic intros. It's always AFI. I don't know why.
I mean, it's a solid tune. And I'm going to ask you, though, about intros. You constantly reference the word big
Yeah, I
when
feel
you were
like
talking about.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? And so with that in mind, I mean, when the band started, the way that people listened to your music was probably very different to how then listening to the new music.
yeah,
This is, I guess, when the band started, there was no such thing as TikTok and Spotify playlists probably weren't quite as important or seen as being important by the labels as
yeah,
they are now.
yeah. It was non-existent. I don't think Spotify existed 20
Right.
years ago. So
And so with all that in mind, I know, for aspiring bands back in the day, you've been trying to get radio play and do all the traditional things that bands try to do to get heard and get exposure and get out there. And the evolution of the internet's absolutely amazing. And there's lots of great bonuses and the fact that people can jump on laptops and phones and make records as on GarageBand and things like that. It's amazing.
yeah,
But one of the things that I think's slightly worrying is the fact that attention spans seem to be getting shorter, and people have got very very rapid thumbs, and they flick through tracks and things like that. And so what we're
yeah,
seeing, maybe more so in sort of pop culture and pop music, is this kind of TikTok era of trying to kind of just hook you instantly. And
yeah.
if they've not got you in 10 seconds, you're gone to the next thing. So I'm going right around the houses with this question, Dan. I've asked it 470 times. I've still never framed it right. I
Yeah,
hope you get where I'm going with it.
I do.
When you're making music now, do any of the things such as TikTok or Spotify playlists and hooking people instantly, does any of that ever filter through and affect your creative process? Or is it part of your creative process?
Um, it never has been in the past, but this record was the first time ever during the writing process where we all like separately, like different points would say, "Hey, maybe that's the TikTok thing, or whatever." Like just because you would be like, "Okay, that's a great chorus. Okay, that feels like something you would just scroll through and hear," but that was not like the main influence at all by any means, and
Yeah.
that's definitely not the train of thought we've ever had in writing music because like we were saying that was 20 years ago whenever we first started putting stuff out and none of this existed at that point. But I do feel like it's good to evolve and stay current and try to you don't want to be the band that just refuses to do anything new and
Sure.
will not adapt to any technologies or anything because that's dumb. The technology is amazing, and like you said, the way the access to music is so awesome now. And but yes, it is hard to grab people's attention. And I have two children; they're 10 and 6, and I watch them scroll through TikTok all day. And my daughter knows every song on the planet somehow. Like,
Yeah,
but only about 20 seconds of every song on the planet.
yeah,
She knows every chorus to songs that came out, when I was a kid. And I'm
yeah,
like, how do you know that? How do you know this? And she can sing it perfect. And then I'm like, but then I'll play her the intro as we're talking, the intro
yeah,
to the song, and she'll be like, "What's this? I never heard this." And I'm like, "Yeah, you just sang it to me
yeah.
like 5 minutes." Yeah. So yeah, it's crazy. No, I don't know. I guess it did kind of seep into our mentality
Yeah.
making these new songs now because you have to think of it kind of in a way. You have because that's the medium that people might hear it on. So yeah, it's weird that it changes the entire creative process almost in a weird way,
Absolutely.
involuntarily.
Yeah, yeah, completely. Dan, I'm going to take you back for track two, and I'm going to ask you to tell me the first song you remember hearing that had an emotional impact on you, please.
I mean, there's probably a million, because that's what connects everybody to music is, if it hits you emotionally. But when I first thought of this, the first thing that popped in my head for some reason was Mike and the Mechanics, The Living Years, mainly because in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, whatever year this came out, I was probably 8, 9 years old. I just remember driving around in my mom and dad's whatever vehicle we had, like a Monte Carlo, a '86 Monte Carlo or something, and I just remember like the modern adult station, whatever this got played on back in the day. It was just constantly playing in the car, and I'm sitting in the back seat, and I was into music pretty young, so I was like always singing along and just. But that song, I was just like, it's so sad feeling, and the lyrics are really, they're really deep and like reflective of life, and it's like it's about his dad dying or whatever the lyrics are fully about, but it's just like I would always be like, oh my god, this is like a sad song. And I never, I songs were all about partying as a kid. You're just like, yeah, yeah, cool stuff, happy, fun. And I just that one like burned into my brain that, oh, okay, this can affect you emotionally too. This is music is deep.
Yeah.
So my phone's ringing. So yeah, I think that was the first time as a kid that I was like, okay, this goes both ways. Or first thing I remember anyway. But
I,
and then there was millions of songs after that, obviously. But
I do think you're so right there. Like music, when you're young, it is. It's just there. It's fun. It's noise, and then all of a sudden, I think in your life you always get that one song that jars you, and it's like, oh, there's
yeah,
different levels to this stuff. Like
yeah,
it can go the other way as well. And then
yeah,
obviously, for most people, you find them sad songs in the formative years, and by the time you're 13, you've discovered the cure, and it's just rapidly downhill from there. It just gets deeper and darker. But I think that the Living Years is a really good example, Dan. I'm so glad you chose it because it's one of them songs. It certainly was for me where it was the first time I questioned mortality and
yeah. I
death.
think that. Yeah,
And it was just like, and I remember like hearing that like around my family and just thinking, oh my God, my dad's gonna die one day. Like
yeah.
that's actually gonna happen. And it was like, and never questioned anything like that before. It was just, it just never occurred to me. And then all of a sudden you've got this guy saying he should have said these things, when his father was alive. And it's I'm trying to think of the vocalist's name from Mike and the Mechanics. It was oh gosh,
Yeah, I don't really know much about Mike and the Mechanics,
well,
really.
it's
Like,
Mike Rutherford who was in
okay,
Genesis with Phil Collins, so it was
yeah,
his
okay,
sort of side band, and the singer also sang in Squeeze for a bit, and he sang Tempted for Squeeze, and Paul Carrick is his name,
okay.
and he's got a wonderful voice, and but yeah, it was just that thing of like because it's such a beautiful sort of story, and it's quite an easy story to understand. It's put across in really sort of simple terms, and it's like, yeah, my dad died, and then hearing about the day that he died, and then
Like by the third verse, you're like, oh my god, this is
yeah,
like you're really invested in the story, like throughout the whole song. You're like living in this
absolutely,
moment, and it's like it's one, yeah, it really draws you in. It's crazy.
yeah. So tell me about where you was growing up. Where was home growing up?
Here in St. Louis, born and raised. Just Midwest kids.
Was Was music always on in the house growing up?
Yeah, yeah, but my mom and dad are not musical. Like they don't play music at all. And I wouldn't even say they really love music. It's just there was always music though. It was a lot of that era, like a lot of Elton John and that kind of stuff, like just like the '80s pop stuff. But
Yeah,
I don't know. There was like some John Cougar Mellencamp would get rocked around.
yeah,
Just some that kind of stuff. But then what really got me into music later was like kind of like the '80s, late '80s metal kind of scene because that was like too cool for them. So
yeah.
I was like, oh, yeah, these guys got tattoos and they say cuss words and stuff. I was like, that,
That's all you need at that age, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. I was like, that's it. That's perfect. And weirdly enough, now I have tattoos and I say cuss words, so it all makes sense. Uh, but yeah, so I kind of found music through that later. They were just casual listeners of music,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't think just sort of glancing through your list, there's any sort of reference to that era of music. What were the bands? Correct me if I'm wrong, but what were the bands that kind of cut through at that point for you?
The first ones, favorite band of all time, for the most part, favorite singer of all time is Skid Row, Sebastian Bach from Skid Row. That was like my favorite one in the early days. I'm 42, so I was a little young for the end of that
Yeah,
era, but that's what I was like 9 or 10 listening to Motley Crue and singing "Girls, Girls, Girls," and I had no idea what that was. Uh, but yeah, it was like Motley Crue, Guns N' Roses, of course. Appetite for Destruction, still one
yeah,
of the best records ever. Just that whole later '80s scene into the early '90s until grunge happened. I was
yeah.
all about that, and then grunge turned
Yeah.
me in a different direction. So
Love it. We'll pick back up on that.
yeah.
But right now, I want you to tell me for track three, the song that reminds you of your time at school, please, Dan.
Yes. So when I thought of that, I thought of high school for me, and that's when I was more into like the pop punk, just '90s kind of pop punk scene. And but I just immediately thought of Tony Hawk Pro Skater playing video games, and the classic main song from that is Goldfinger's Superman,
Yeah,
and it's like one of the just things that's burned in your brain if you were a kid playing Pro Skater as a teenage skateboarding punk rock kid. So yeah, Goldfinger ended up having a huge influence on our life because John Feldman, the singer, is the one who found us and got us signed and produced our first record and all that stuff. So,
he
so
discovered you.
yeah, he took us on tour and then he was an A&R for Maverick Records at the time. So yeah, he's the one. He's the reason we're all right here right now. So
That's
yeah, so
wonderful.
it had a big impact on my years then for sure.
Tell me a little about school. Did you enjoy it?
Not really. No, I don't know. I was fine. Like I didn't hate it, but I was only going to school to promote my band, basically. Like I
Yeah,
always loved. We always had a band in some form or another, and that was my social thing. Was just I have a band. You should come see my band. So that I would go to school for that. Other than that, I skipped a whole lot. Barely graduated. I don't know how. I missed like 60 days my senior year, and then still graduated. I was
yeah,
smart enough. It was like I was smart enough to figure out how to get around the system. I think that's what I was learning in high school was how do I manipulate the system and still succeed?
yeah.
How can I get out of school but not fail? So which I guess that's a great lesson to learn in life because that's kind of how life works.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, was there any question? I like to ask guests like what they wanted to be when they was at school, but it sounds like it was pretty laid out for
I
you
was
already.
pretty dead set on that, and I didn't know if it would really work out, but I was like, I don't care what happens. I'm gonna be in a band, and we're gonna do this as hard as we can for as long as we can. And yeah, luckily, I guess if you have that mindset, it's kind of hard to fail if you're like dead set on something that much. But we didn't have any idea if we were good enough, or. But we loved it, so we went for it.
Did it feel possible? Did it feel that like was there bands that had come from where you'd come from that it was like if they can do it, we can do it?
Not a lot. No, I mean, there's not a lot of big rock bands from this area. Right before we got signed, the Nelly thing happened. The hip hop scene from St. Louis really started
Yeah,
getting really big. So Nelly and Chingy and there was a bunch of big artists coming out at the time from St. Louis, and that was like 2000, 2001, and then we
yeah,
came out within the next couple of years. So the St. Louis was like in the world, like out there, like oh,
yeah.
you're from Nellyville, and I'm like yeah, yeah, St. Louis, Nellyville, right on, which was great for us. We were like yeah, cool, we'll ride that wave.
Yeah, yeah. You said that when you was at school, you'd just be telling people, "Come watch my band, come watch my band." To be young and to be approaching people to say, "Come and watch me do something that's going to involve me being on the stage in front of an audience."
Yeah.
How confident were you as a young lad?
That's weird. Yeah. I was very confident in the music world, but not really any other way, you know?
Yeah,
I'm pretty mellow and shy for the most part, other than being on stage, which is really weird because most people are like, "How do you get up there and do that?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I never thought about that part. Maybe the first couple times it was kind of scary, I guess,
yeah,
but yeah, I don't know. We've always just been very confident about our band. It's like the one thing that I'm like, I know I'm good at this. I want people to watch me do it, you know?
yeah.
Other than that, I'm like, well, yeah, I'm not that cool. I don't need praise for anything. I just want to
Yeah.
be good at music. That's all. So yeah, I don't know. It's crazy that, yeah, at that young of an age, we were very much like, yeah, yeah. Hey, check us out. Check us out. We're good. We're good. Watch this. Come watch what we do.
But at any age, the idea for a lot of people, I'd say a majority of the people, in the world, to walk on stage and then perform something and have eyes staring at them is daunting. Um, have you got, or did you have you? What do you do now? Have you ever had like a sort of a routine that you do before you walk out on stage? Do you still get, do you get stage fright at all?
Not stage fright, but I still get like that nervous energy before you go
Yeah.
on, you know, like no matter what. It's like, oh, okay, okay, we got to go on. It's more like, okay, don't suck today, you know? You got to do this in front of these people. Be good today. Like
Yeah.
be good at it. Especially if your voice is not there or you're not feeling great or something. But no, not really nervous. But yeah, like there's very much like an hour before every show, our band like always shuts everybody off, and like we just sit there. I do vocal warm ups and stuff, and we listen to music and just get in the mood. You know, we make
Mm.
sure we're like in the right mindset usually before, because otherwise that can kind of mess you up if there's
Yeah.
too much going on. You're like, I gotta go on stage. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, not a lot of rituals. Maybe a couple drinks and just kind of hang out and get in the mood.
Yeah. Nice. Tell me about the first song you remember buying from a record store.
See, this is hard because yeah, it was cassette tapes and you know, sometime in the '80s, like I'm saying. So, but I know that from the cassette tape collection I still have, I know that one of the very first ones was Vanilla Ice's whatever the record's called, "To the Extreme,"
Yeah.
I think is what the record's called. But yeah, the
Yeah.
one with Ice Ice Baby on it. I definitely own that cassette tape, and I know that it was one of the first ones that I picked out as a kid. And my mom probably was like, "Okay, whoever Vanilla Ice is." But yeah, still have it to this day,
Yeah.
and it's not one of those ones you're real proud of because it's you know it's kind of a silly album, but it stood the test of time. It's Vanilla Ice, you know,
Yeah.
it's a
I,
classic song.
it is, and it's so easy to hate on him because it's become almost a novelty record, and he's become somewhat of a character that's often sort of pushed up for ridicule. And it's it shouldn't be forgotten that he was an incredible rapper, and
Yeah,
then he signed this major deal, and they pushed him into being a pop star, I guess, but
yeah,
and he was he was probably the biggest star in the world for a couple of years, and then
yeah,
there was a rapid decline. Make no mistake, though, even the coolest people in hip hop would be hard pushed to deny that Ice Ice Baby's not a fucking great tune, man.
yeah, yeah. It had a huge impact on the entire world. You know, it's
Yeah,
like it probably influenced thousands of rappers to come after that. You know, so I mean, it definitely did. But
yeah.
yeah, you can't deny the impact it had. So yeah, I still think it's fine. If it
Yeah.
comes on, everybody's gonna sing it. It's not like
You
one of those
know.
songs that you're like, oh, come on. You're like, oh yeah, oh yeah. Stop. Wait, what's the first? Collaborate and listen, and then you just go. You just keep.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it. It's dumb.
It's ingrained into the fabric of society.
Yeah,
Everybody knows the first verse to that rap.
yep,
It's
yep.
crazy. That's not an easy thing to do, to get something like that ingrained in the brains of people globally. That's hard thing.
Pretty
A
insane.
lot of pop stars would like that.
Yeah, I bet my 6-year-old daughter knows it somehow. She probably knows every word to it.
Only
I'm sure
20
she does.
seconds.
Yeah, at least one part of the song. I don't know which one the TikTok clip is, but she knows that.
I want to ask you a little bit about record stores and whether it was cassettes, CDs, or whatever it was. As you got older and you start finding yourself in a band and you found your tribe, you found them sort of like-minded friends that are all into the same music as you. Did the record store become an important place for you then?
Yeah, definitely. We still have a record shop here in St. Louis called Vintage Vinyl, and we're actually doing a signing there on Friday. But it's just one of those shops that's been there for 30 plus years, I think. I don't even know when it opened. It might have been there for longer, but I know that I've known about it for at least 30 years. And yeah, that was like every release date, they would have the midnight releases where you would show up the night before on Monday nights, 'cause everything came out on Tuesdays here back in the day. So yeah, you would go at midnight and line up and you get all the new CDs, and yeah, it
Yeah,
was quite the thing. And once again, we'd be handing out flyers and promoting our band at that record store.
yeah,
I mean, there was others too, but that's just one that still survived through all this, which is
yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
Yeah, that's like the mall or the cool gas station or whatever. That's like
yeah.
that was the spot for musicians.
I asked you about confidence earlier, Dan, and to be sort of pushing your band at such a young age and trying to get people at school to come and watch you play and stuff like that, and then to find yourself, getting a record deal and then having, huge success that that so many artists would dream of having, and to have, carved out the career that you have in what is undeniably a very, very tough industry to have success in,
Yeah.
and sustain that as well. Tell me about how driven you are.
Um, sometimes I look back and and it surprises me how driven we were, and but I don't. I guess it has not changed. It's just I don't know because I don't feel like I'm like that in most facets of life.
Yeah,
I'm pretty like, okay, whatever happens happens. But when it came to music, it was always we just had to do things. It's like just something that's built into you. I guess if you really believe in something and you love it, that there's just drive behind it.
yeah,
So at least the sentiment was always real. We always loved what we were doing, and we just had to be pushing this. It was like this is what we should be doing with our lives, and if we can, we have to do it. But yeah, I don't feel like I'm real driven in I'm not like a businessman. I'm not
yeah,
I'm not a salesman. I don't go out and I can't push things on people other than my band. So
yeah,
I don't know where that came from or how, we can do that. But because I don't think anybody in the band really is very crazy driven in other
yeah.
areas of life. It's just about our band. It's something that we always believed in, and yeah, it's crazy.
But that's your passion, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's it. I mean, especially now as a kid, you think like, well, maybe I'll find something else, but then, in your 40s, you're like, oh, well, that's what I've done. And
Yeah,
that's still what I love doing. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
guess this is my life. That's what I do.
yeah.
It's weird.
I want to go back a little bit, and for the next track, I'd like you to tell me about the song that soundtrack your years going to clubs. And I should stress, that I never want people to think that it's got to be some rave or some kind of dance club. It can be a dive bar. It can be your rock club. It can be whatever sort of whatever venue you found yourself in them formative years, hanging out with your tribe. So
Yeah.
yeah, tell me the song that soundtrack that, please, Dan.
Yeah, when I thought about that, because yeah, I'm not like the club kind of guy, or that wasn't our scene. But then it immediately made me think of like just when we started touring and playing different clubs every single night, but mainly like being in the van together and driving around and just the song that like always connected with all of the guys in the band that we would drive around and just always want to listen to. It was always Saves the Day, their record Through Being Cool, but mainly the song Rocks Tonic Juice Magic. It's I don't there's something about that record that time in our lives, just being in the van, we would put it on and sing the entire record if we couldn't stay awake or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then go to the next show and then play. This wasn't necessarily at the clubs, I guess, or
Yeah.
like at the venue that we were playing that we would listen, but that
Yeah.
was definitely the driving record and very influential on our early stuff as well. And yeah, that's what popped into my head when I thought about that. That's the one that we all agreed on all the time. It was
Tell me a little bit about them early tours, and all of a sudden signing a record deal and finding yourself in a van and playing these tours. Like, tell me a little bit about the sort of camaraderie and the excitement uh, and everything that kind of comes with being a young band you know, being given these opportunities to go and do something that you love doing. Tell me about those early years.
Yeah, it's crazy. Because we're all from St. Louis, like I said. So we moved from here to California, to Southern California, like Orange County, outside of LA, as a band. Like the 6 or 7 guys all just piled in a van, drove to California with barely any plan. We just rented a 1 or a 3 bedroom house, one house. We all just piled in the house. We lived there for like a year while we made our first record, and but it was like there's no consequences. You know, you just go at that age. It was like, I don't, man, we don't have to be in St. Louis, right? Let's go to California. Let's see what happens. And we just lived there for a year. Then we get a van and get signed, and or we already had the van, but we had already been touring a little bit. But you get signed, and then you just live in this van for 300 and something days a year, and you just didn't care. You just go everywhere. You just do anything you can do, and there's nobody to say no. There's no stopping you. That young energy. We were full of energy. There was like it exhausts me now, like thinking back.
Yeah,
I mean, we still have energy and we're still cool. We're still cool, man. Uh, but yeah, man, just to have that youthful, like late teen, early 20s
yeah,
enthusiasm and energy, it's quite a thing. It's crazy.
yeah. I heard an interview the other day with Noel Gallagher of Oasis, and he said them early albums. He said that the first album, or he said their first 2 albums. He said it's as young bands. He said you get like about a 4 year period where you're the same age as the young people that are listening to your music, and they understand everything you're writing about because you're in it
Yeah.
with them. And then success and money and excess and everything else gets in, and everybody grows up and everything else. But he said you get that sweet spot of like about 4 years where you're completely in tune. Can you relate to that?
Absolutely, yeah. Because yeah, we were part of the scene with our peers at that point, and definitely by the third record or so, it was like, okay, what do we write about? Like, what are we doing? Because we weren't really big into the same exact scene anymore, and the music was, but yeah, it's exactly what it was. And then you
Yeah,
start writing about different things, and then we started getting more political with lyrics and stuff, and that wasn't connecting as well with people. It's like, but that's all. I didn't know what else to do because I wasn't singing about me and being a kid and driving around in the van anymore. Because it's like,
yeah,
okay, well now I'm growing up, so I got to. But later, especially on this new record, I definitely found a way to like get channeled back into the more personal lyrics and found a way to connect on that level to music just for myself
yeah,
again, especially through having kids and having different things to focus on and really emotionally connect to.
yeah,
So I have found a way back to that, I think, in a way that works for me. But yeah, it's definitely we are not our crowd anymore. We are
yeah,
not the fans. It's a different thing now. And I'm
yeah,
writing songs mostly for myself. Usually, I make music, and I don't really worry about if it connects to a certain demographic of people anymore.
yeah.
I know as long as it connects to me and I'm emotionally invested, it's going to work. So
Love it. Love it. Well, let's take you home for this track. And I want you to tell me a favourite song from an artist from your home county, please.
yeah, well, like I didn't want to give this up earlier, but besides Nelly, there was only one rock band that had gotten signed and that was like touring and was kind of big before Story of the Year, and they were called The Urge. And they didn't do a whole lot outside of the area, like probably never really toured overseas or anything. But The Urge is still a huge staple for St. Louis. And they still can sell out clubs every couple times a year here, and still just a great band. It's kind of like uh, it was like a mix between like 90s ska and like new metal and some weird amalgamation. They toured with like 311 and that kind of crowd,
Yeah.
But the first song on their one of their first records called Brainless, and it's just like the local rock radio station here still plays them all the time.
Yeah.
It's weird because it's weird to be that big in one city and like not really have a following outside of it, but they're just an amazing band. The records are still great to this day.
It's so strange, the sort of perception of what I hear from that and what you probably mean from that. It's like, they're big in Missouri. And it's like, that's bigger than the UK. Like, it's
That's
bigger
true.
than our
Yeah,
country, which is
yeah,
like,
yeah, that is true.
huge in the UK. That's incredible. So it's like, yeah, props to that
I
band.
forget how big all of our states are here in comparison. But yeah, so yeah, maybe they'd have quite the reach around here. But yeah,
Yeah. That is the last question, and I'm going to ask you to be a tastemaker now, as your kids may call it, an influencer. It's a song that you think many people may not know that you would like them to hear.
Yeah, that's hard because there's probably a million of those as well. But the band I listen to the most, I'm into like a lot of older kind of punk rock stuff. I like fast underground terrible music usually that most people are like, I don't get it. It's too annoying. But I immediately thought of a Wilhelm Scream. That was they're a band that a lot of people know, but I just they're a little underrated for the kind how good of musicians they are and like the amount of punk rock that they play. It's just it's amazing, and I just saw them recently and kind of got to hang out and became friends along the way. So, but yeah, their newest record, there's a song on there called "Apocalypse Porn," and what a great title for one. But it's just great. The lyrically, they have some of the most amazing like deep, weird, introspective lyrics, and it's very influential on me. It makes I put it on all the time if I'm trying to like just get in a mood to like make my brain work, just
Yeah.
because it makes me think, and I love it.
Do you find that that's what you do? If you want to write, you will listen to other music to kind of like fire you up and inspire you.
Sometimes, yeah, I found that movies kind of do it better for me. Like especially if I'm actually working on something, I'll put on something that's visually kind of stimulating or something that like just like a real movie that makes me feel something because that inspires me almost more. It gets me in like a mood to really think and or you can do both at the same time. You can have it on while you're writing. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah, there's definitely songs that do that too, but you can't really listen to a song while you're writing a song because that
Yeah.
doesn't really translate. Yeah, it's more movies and visual, I think.
You're talking about that sort of visual, like when you write, and I don't mean this in some kind of strange way, but do you visualize it like like as a story, as a film, as a video, or like can you picture it as a story, as a
Yeah.
storyboard, I guess.
Sometimes, yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah. Never really thought about it like that, but I guess yeah. Especially, well, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, sometimes you literally are seeing like a video, you're like, "Oh, I could imagine this happening if we were
yeah,
doing a video." But yeah, no. Yeah, yeah, you might visualize it as like a storyboard and like try to place it in your brain like, "Okay, where do I need this to go?"
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, well look, you've done your tracks, you've picked your tracks. I want to know about the new record and what's going to be happening.
Yes, new record. It's called "Tear Me to Pieces." Um, it's very good. I'm excited about it. I think we did a good job of uh like really kind of reaching back and finding the energy and like the uh the power that we had on the first couple records,
Sure.
but also progressing at the same time and making something new and modern. And that's the hard balance is like trying to take what you've done in the past, but do it again, but in a different, new, fun way.
Yeah.
And that's kind of always the only goal. It's like let's be story of the year, but let's make something new and something cool that we love. And I think we achieved that, and we're really excited about it for sure. And now it's coming out on Friday or whatever day this comes out. It's March
Yeah.
10th. It'll be out. But and yeah, it's just play a bunch of shows and promote it and hope for the best. That's all you can really do nowadays. Hope that it gets
Wonderful.
on TikTok and Spotify playlists, man.
That's where it's at, mate. That's where it's at. And them shows, how far are you going? You're going to find yourself in the UK at some point?
We're working on it. Yeah, I've been doing a bunch of UK interviews this week and saddening news that I'm like, we don't have anything booked yet. But we've had a few things that fell through last minute that we keep
Yeah,
trying. But yeah, it's expensive and hard to get there right now.
of
So
course,
we're
of
working on
course.
it and we have some plans. Yeah, that is the plan
Wonderful.
to get there very soon.
And Dan, if people want to sort of keep up to speed with everything that the band's doing, where's the best place to keep up to speed?
It's at Story of the Year on everything, on Instagram and everything. Then yeah, that's the only thing we really do. We're not too savvy with the social medias,
Yeah,
but we have management that helps us with that too. They keep everybody up to date, so it's all out there.
wonderful. We'll take you in it. So when this episode comes out, anybody that's not explored yourselves yet, then we'll make it nice and easy for them to go and do that. Dan,
Absolutely.
it's been a real joy, man, chatting to you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
that was super fun. I love those questions. I love talking about different music, and that's fun. That's great. I loved it. Thank you.
Oh, absolute pleasure, mate. I'm going to press stop. Don't go anywhere.
Okay.